afternoon, and welcome to this week's episode of LevelUp Cyber Live. My name is Tony Bryan, and I am your host. Very excited about this week's guest, Jon Brandt, good friend. We've been hanging out, 4, 5, 6 years now. I think we met it through our time at NICE and some of the different events. One of the smartest, brightest guys I've met in the cybersecurity space. Has an incredible amount of passion around just workforce. And all the things that are centered around hiring. So, Jon, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Tony.
And today's discussion is timely, right? So, Jon's been a big contributing participant in the ISACA State of Cybersecurity Report for the past several years in his role. So he's got a lot of hot takes. But before we jump into the hot takes, I know you pretty well, but not everybody does. So I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about, how you got to where you're at, and we'll go from there.
All right, awesome. Sure thing. So, Jon Brandt, I'm the Director of Professional Practices and Innovation here at ISACA. I've been at ISACA for just over 9 years now. Prior to that, I cut my chops in the military. So, retired Navy Master Chief, started off, in classified RF-based communications and obviously digital age, and morphed through from that IT-centric role into cyber ops, and then retired and got this gig through networking. No surprise, right? A friend of a friend knew somebody that was hiring here at ISACA, and that's how I got here.
So I know I look forward every year to this report. What was the one thing that you were most excited about the State of Cybersecurity Report this year?
The benefit of being the director of professional practice, I can kind of steer where the survey's going from year to year. And something we did a couple years ago was to start providing some longitudinal views on things. So to me, that's always a value add, I think, to people, because what we're seeing is that timing is everything on certain parts of the data, and it will influence, namely, if there's big attacks, typically you're going to see responses levitate a certain way. The economic landscape, we've seen some effects here as well. But this year in particular, we started to drill into and differentiate between entry-level positions and non-entry-level positions, which I really think is a long overdue data point out there for the industry. You've been a player in trying to feed the pipeline, right? There's a lot of entities in that market. We've been doing it a long time. So here at ISACA, we're really trying to provide actionable information, right? Now, it's not the sky is falling, because, to be honest with you, Tony, nobody cares anymore. The fear, uncertainty, and doubt of it all, we're well past that. Yes, we need more people to do work in this space. However, there are also a lot of people that have been trained in some various kinds of capacity to do the work who are not able to get a job. And that's pretty concerning. And I think that's the thing that we need to continue to pick apart.
Yeah. I know you and I have had multiple discussions over the years with, some choice language and probably a few bad words along the way around just, I think, some frustrations we've had with the space, right? We've seen lots of entities pop up and have a solution to the skills gap, or whatever we want to call it today. And the reality is, a lot of this effort has really kind of fallen short because there's still a gap in just the employer side. And that's not pointing a finger at the companies. You're wrong, right? Please don't take it the wrong way. But, there's a strategic and tactical way in which you do entry-level hiring. And there's still a lot of discussion and a lot of, I think, room for improvement along that. And, shameless plug, like last week's episode, we talked about build, borrow, buy, and kind of follow that up with a blog right behind it like that. Really thinking through just those 3 simple concepts of how you actually want to grow your team, and then build out strategic pathways and partners to do those 3 things is huge, right? To be able to grow. So What was one thing that you saw in the report that shocked you, right? Like you said, oh my gosh, what was that thing that really stood out to you?
Of our respondents, so 71% combined had open positions. 21% of those were entry level. And I thought that was I thought that was interesting. And it was a larger number than I thought it would be, truthfully. However, by the same token, it's still the primary, when respondents were asked how long it takes to fill those positions, the largest percentage of them are saying indicated that 3 to 6 months. So it's bad enough for a non-entry level job to have to take that long, but for an entry level position, and we did specify, right? Like it was a job that did not require experience, certifications, or degrees. And we're doing something wrong. There's something is broken on the acquisition side of things. And again, to your point, Tony, this isn't, who am I to say what a business needs or doesn't need? But I do think in a lot of ways, the two primary skills frameworks that have been published and continuing to grow and evolve, I think we need to do a better job at identifying what's actually necessary for any given position. And that's both your current ones as well as the future. Because I think, just in my experience alone, and a lot of, anecdotal data that I've, evidence and conversations with people, there's an inherent bias in job descriptions, right? Like at the end of the day, and maybe that's part of what we're plagued with right now. So in some ways, there are a lot of people we know that are sitting on the sidelines that can't break into the industry. Personally, I think that collectively we should be pretty well ashamed of ourselves because we've wasted a lot of time, energy, and money in particular, standing up programs that put people through that ultimately couldn't get a job. You're on mute, Tony.
I am on mute. You and I, 3 years into this and still can't figure it out. But you and I were both at the NICE conference when the WGU president kind of gave his remarks around, what he has seen over the past years. And that has really stuck with me. Showing headlines from 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and like all of them are legit accurate, 10 years later, which is, you sprinkle that with billions upon billions of dollars spent in products and services. And like I don't think there's anybody that's in this industry and sector that's going to say they don't want it all to be better, right? Like they want it to be easier and they would like to have it done. So, what is that? What's the missing link? What are we not seeing in all the stuff that we've created and all these programs and stuff? Like what?
For me, I think there's two themes that are emerging right now. The first one is I think that we're hung up on the techie nature of the work, right? And don't get me wrong, listen, there are parts of the cybersecurity in particular, right? Or more broadly, we'll just say, IT cyber, that are highly technical. I'm not disputing that at all. But largely speaking, right, that we are a protectionist occupation, right? We largely exist to protect data of whatever that is. And when you look, when I started, I had this epiphany on a walk, right, about this. And the more I noodle through that, the more it makes sense to me. Because if we look at law enforcement side of things and their challenges, right? Granted, different protection focus, but in some regards, it's a similar challenge, right? Because you're always playing defense in this realm. Granted, yes, there's a small percentage that are offensive focused and get to do the proverbial really cool stuff. But largely speaking, the primary need is to figure out what happened after the fact. That analyst role. And I think for me, that's the thing we need to be beating the drum over. It's the need for analytical mindsets. It's the reason why people from non-cyber careers are successful when they move over. It's the analytical thinking, that, you know, critical thinking, analytical reasoning, how they're able to kind of fuse disparate pieces of information together. And when they come over, it works for them, because we've repeatedly heard some very big voices say, we can teach people to do technical things. That's not the issue. Which brings us back to the year after year, our respondent data is signaling that soft skills is the #1 demand. Now, for your particular audience, right, and who you serve, you know, soft skills, and I hate the word gap, right? But I guess maybe that's better than deficiency. But at the end of the day, it has grown by 2 percentage points year after year for 3 years in a row. So to me, that tells me that amongst university graduates, if that's the primary need, then perhaps at least in that arena, we kind of need to rethink what the deliverables are on the backside of it. You know, there is no one size fits all answer, and everybody wants an easy button. Hell, employers want the easy button, right? That's why they're looking for the unicorns, right? Those proverbial unicorns to bring on board. But we're seeing year after year that soft skills trumps everything else. But within the current workforce, and I think this is for everybody in the younger level, and this ties into that protectionist occupation. You know, how I'm kind of connecting the dots there is, when respondents were asked about criticality of certain soft skills, honesty came in almost it was the second from the bottom. And to me, that's a huge red flag right now. I'm not saying that communication skills are important in a slew of other things above that. But when we largely exist to protect corporate assets, government data, intellectual property, critical infrastructure, the fact that we don't think honesty it rates higher is pretty concerning. But at the same time, it's kind of indicative of the year 2023, right? Across all walks of life.
Yeah. Are you saying we're in tumultuous times?
Yeah.
I would be remiss. I know you guys cover AI in the report. You know, like, and it's come up often. We had a board meeting earlier today, and you know, the question was, how are we using AI at CyberUp to inform the things we're doing? Like, what impact do you see AI playing over the next 2 to 3 years on the workforce? Does it shrink it? Does it make it bigger? Like, what are you thinking for the AI stuff?
So let's talk within the confines of the State of Cyber Report first. So with that, we actually saw a downtick this year on use of AI to augment staff, right, in a security operations realm. That necessary, you know, again, timing is everything. And if we look at when GPT-4 hit the scenes earlier this year, huge, you know, there was a lot of turmoil with that. We had a white paper in flight. Great author. I was super passionate about this project we were going through, and we basically had to do an all stop on that project because he was like, listen, GPT-4 fundamental changes a lot of assumptions known up to now. So long story short, you know, slight project delay. We got that asset out. Selfless plug, promise and peril of AI. It's a risk-based white paper. You could go to ISACA and go find that. But in the broader sense, I think it's going to provide opportunity. We did do a pulse poll, and I'd be willing to come back. I can't talk about actually the underlying themes here. Because that data is not public. People are worried about it losing their jobs. I'm not convinced we're going to see that in its entirety. I think that what we're seeing right now is that generative AI is fundamentally, it is really, truly a disruptive technology in its purest form, altering just about every kind of work that's out there. So It doesn't matter. You don't need to be in a tech field for generative AI to be affecting you right now. You could just see that by the number of lawsuits that are showing up over authorship right now and potential theft there. But I do believe what we're going to see is we're going to see an evolution in some areas. I have previously described this as I think AI is there's going to kind of be a shell game of sorts. Some lower level work is probably going to be able to get automated, and we can look at like the manufacturing industry. We've already seen some of that over the past, probably decade plus. But in turn, you need folks who actually understand that, who algorithm work, the auditing of that. It's gonna spark some new functions that we haven't even begun to envision. The bigger tagline to that is that, at least here in the US, our education system is not structured for everything that's coming our way, nor has it been. And the impacts that are happening within the industry and industries at large don't translate back to the pipelines that supply those people. So again, whether that's accountants, skilled trades, IT related, it doesn't matter. There are impacts there, and it just takes too long to go back into that pipeline. That's not to negate the what value universities can add to the conversation and the relationships and partnerships that they found that they forge with especially local employers or markets. But I think agility is going to be the name of the game moving forward.
I know I'm interested. Like we use it specifically for, social media is a great way where I think that is, automation of those types of tasks and things, it does have impact, I think, on job security. But I think it's hard for me to eliminate the human element, because even as you get that data that's going to come to you, somebody has to evaluate it, or it's getting processed in an AI machine to where somebody still has to say this isn't real or this is not. And I think it's almost impossible.
What's missing there's context, right?
Correct. Yeah.
A machine can't provide that. And there was an article I started to read this morning. It was talking, major reasons AI projects fail. Right. And I think we're starting to see, we saw kind of a knee-jerk reaction and right after GPT-4 hit the streets, we're like, if you don't have a policy in place already, you're already behind the power curve. People are using it within the workplace. People are putting corporate data at risk in the workplace. People are putting employers at risk by potentially basically lifting other people's thoughts. We know that there's lawsuits well underway with this. I think there's a larger concern here as to viability. What's going to happen with the public large language models that we're training off of data without permission? You've seen some comments from folks and, well, this is going to be for the greater good. Well, define maybe to you, but now, and to your point, there's a huge economic piece of this and a potential impact on society and the global market as well. This is a lot more complicated than just some, technology widget that somebody created and has released out to the wind. Some far-reaching impacts that have not been considered, or if they were based on a moment in time, and the information and what we continue to learn is going to continue to snowball.
Yeah. I think the Hollywood STAG, that strike and AFTRA, that was a very clear indicative impact of AI and the long-term consequences that can come with it, right? Like there really is the ability to take likenesses and scripts. I'd seen, I think we talked about another episode of like an entire new version of South Park was created via AI, and the animation looked the same. the tone, the comedy was the same, and it was all just based off of learned information. So, it was frightening. It was more of a social experiment. I don't think anything was done with it, but it really is, that copyright infringement, and how does that impact creatives? I don't think we've quite got to the full business case of corporate America just yet that is out there of those implications. What is a thing, in the report that you're, looking, as you think you're starting, I'm sure you're already planning the 2024 report, right? That's what you do. You get in, you think about what's next year look like. What trend do you think sticks between 23 and 24, or just kind of seems to sustain over the next couple of years?
Well, the trend that is going to continue right off the bat is the budgets are leveling out. We've seen that over, I think I'm reporting on 8 years now worth of hard, concrete data on that. And every year we've seen the peaks and valleys, just minimal. And it's kind of like it's the ripple effect. If you look at that actual line diagram within the report, it was pretty drastic at the beginning, which not really surprising. And it just continues to level out. So I do think that looking ahead to next year, which was actually going to be ISACA's 10th year reporting on state of cybersecurity, which is a huge milestone, I think, for any research body, but especially for us. It's our longest running research report. So I think that it'll be interesting to see what continues to happen with the entry level reporting. Again, we're just now digging into that, right, and introduce that. So we will continue that and carry that one forward. And then if my hunch holds true, we're potentially going to see a reversal on the optimism on cyber attack detection, and probably a rebound of AI use within security operations space.
Do you think that some of the current climate of things that are happening around the world has impact on some of this stuff? I mean, obviously, the short answer is yes. what with the stuff happening in Israel, I mean, there's so much happening right now. What do you think impact that has on some of this?
So there's two views, right? For us, it depends on how much of the membership it would ultimately be affected. Knowing that the North America and the EU are our two largest regions at this point in time, I'm not sure how much of the geopolitical will affect certain data within there. We do know like the timing of the MOVEit breach, and now you're seeing in the MGM not as much for the demographics within the reporting population. But the laws of primacy and recency always come into play, right, Tony? Like if with us collecting data, by the time the 24 report launches, it's going to be coming up on, I don't know, 9 months past, 10 months past the MOVEit breach. So unless something else big hits by then, maybe we don't see that. But on a broader scale, what we're seeing with cyber enabling kinetic warfare, right, for a lack of better words, is huge. We're seeing a lot of reporting out there, targeting critical infrastructure. I think one of the biggest concerns we have, for me as a person, I think a lot of technology people and anybody obviously in the government space of any country, it's the lack of commonality as to how we define critical infrastructure. You and I's background, right? Like, what the Geneva Convention covers. You know what I'm saying? Those things. When it comes to critical infrastructure, though, it's a little subjective. We take here in the US, we're a lot more all-encompassing with it, although we don't put the amount of money against all of it for everything we say is critical infrastructure. it's not all getting funded the same. We that's pretty obvious there.
How I was blown away that not a single peep of what happened this past weekend, even that we know of, hit radio waves or had any type of response to like prepare. You know what I mean? Like that blows my mind in 2023 that there was zero intelligence.
Well, yeah, well, I think that's the bigger question, right? And a bigger concern. And I did serve in was in cryptology, which is tied to intelligence field, and it seems like the assets that are supposed to be looking for those big triggers, how is this missed? Like there's always chatter. Sorry, like you and I both know, like, but you have to be willing to listen for it. So it is it's a major tragedy what's happening right now. We're seeing a lot. We've seen the Ukraine conflict going on for a long time too. And the uncertainty of it all, right? And I think it was, I think the EU basically calling for, hey, listen, depending on how this Israel thing goes, there's a lot of secondary effects and really just expand within that region. Yeah. So it just sucks right at the end of the day. And then,
none of it's good. Yeah.
No,
I'm just curious, like, do we see an article in a month or so of some sort of missed trigger? You know what I mean? Like it does strike me as odd that as much as we've advanced, to the point of this whole 20 some odd minutes of discussion, we've come a long way in technology and managing things. And, how does not one intelligence report that we know, right? I'm sure somebody.
Yeah, that we know, right? At the end of the day, like
we know, but like it just seems strange that that it would have gone through. And all to me, I think it all is relevant. It's just I hope it becomes a lesson learned in this moment of like, great, what do we need to be doing better to really prevent and make sure those things don't happen again, so we can be prepared and ready to respond. And we had shared last week a post on socials. There's been some recent legislature passed. I think Congress went first to help start reducing some of the federal requirements for cybersecurity roles within the federal government, right? And we've been talking about this for years, right? 4 or 5 since I've been doing almost 8 years now, trying to really reimagine 8570 or 8140 or whatever standards we are for government work. If there's an indicator that has to be addressed today, was what we just talked about with lack of intelligence to prepare for things, right? Like there's hundreds of thousands of jobs sitting in the government right now, whether it be a DOD or GS employee or government contractor, that are going unfilled because there's just simply not enough cleared, educated, certified people that are going to be able to go do it. And the biggest variable, and outside of just the cleared and educated, the educated and certified is the clearances. We've got to figure out the clearance piece to really get more people into these seats to do it, or we're going to have to make a cyber, I know we made Space Force. We need a cyber force or something that does a better job to make sure that we're all like national security is really accounted for in just a different way. So
no, you're right. And it's interesting because how many, no company wants to make the investment to pay for you to get your clearance right now, even if you've had one in the past. So all we're doing, at least from a whole of nation approach, is we're robbing Peter to pay Paul right now. The reason where we're able to even minimally man government classified positions right now is via attrition from the uniformed services moving over.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% concur. We've got to get beyond, right? Even for us, in order for me to help those organizations, I have to specifically recruit transitioning veterans. And luckily, transitioning veterans make incredible cybersecurity professionals because it's mission oriented. There's a purpose. There's a higher calling to that. And so it is such a great transition. But I really think there's some policy and some procedures that have to get improved to open that up to beyond military personnel because I think there is a large desire for federal service for people, but if I can't get into it, it really makes it really, really. So we hit 30 minutes. We talked about fast ago. So what advice would you give to those listening to level up their cybersecurity careers? The world is your oyster. You give it.
Whatever your business is, that's what you need to focus on. And by that, if you're in the technology space, it's easy. Okay, yes, I need to be technology oriented. But the reality is, if you're wanting to advance or you're trying to get a foothold, you got to be able to articulate benefit to an organization, benefit to your company, benefit to the employer, to the mission, whatever else that entails. A lot of times I even have, maybe not directly relevant to your audience, Tony, but how many senior, people who have been in tech field for, coming up on a decade. What can I do? Should I go get my PhD in cybersecurity, or should I go get a master's of cybersecurity? I'm like, if you've got 5-10 years of experience and you tangible, reportable experience, go focus on a business, because it's your ability to be able to demonstrate impact to the decision makers in any company that's going to matter. Short of that, experience doesn't have to be paid work, and I think this is very much something that for your primary audience that they could take away is local conferences, B-sides, cyber range events, cyber patriot, you name it. Volunteer work with local nonprofits to kind of help them or whatnot. There's a ton of opportunity there, and it's all kind of how you basically are able to take something and articulate it in paper into moving ahead. So short of that, humility goes a long way. We all simply cannot ever know it all. And that's the single best advice I can ever give anybody is, you go in an interview and you're asked the stump the chump question. I don't know, but I could go research. I could go dig up, something on it and move forward.
Well, John, I always appreciate the discussions and the insights. Some, I think, great advice for folks. Find your passion, figure out where you fit in, and continue to do. I appreciate the feedback. If you haven't, I encourage everybody go check out the ISACA report. It really does do a great job year after year of kind of highlighting just trends and data in the space, and I think it helps. And honestly, I think until we start using the data that's given to us and some of the research and really applying that into our day-to-day functions, like, we're still going to struggle. So, the stuff and the work that ISACA does really does drive decisions for your organization and should help kind of influence some of those things. So for those that tune in every week, next week, very excited. We have a guest, Sean St. Hill. We're going to be talking about the MGM and Caesar breaches. Have some hot takes. It's obviously a couple hundreds of millions of dollars in ransomware and some good things, right? So we're going to dive in a little bit of that next week, and then we've got a couple other great guests that we're lining up. So I always appreciate our guests, John. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and until next week, have a great start to your fall. It's already fall. Have a great week.